Turning now to Wisconsin, where we are still following the tragic story of the murder of Shade Robinson. Earlier this month, authorities arrested and charged suspect Maxwell Anderson in the death of the missing 19-year-old. They say Robinson went on a first date with him on April 1st, which is the last time that she was seen alive. Her car was found torched and fragments of human remains were found, including a leg. Now, these remains were later confirmed to belong to Robinson. Now, last week, someone walking along Lake Michigan in South Milwaukee found a torso and an arm.
It is very calm, very peaceful, and definitely taints the area.
But just to know that that was going on here is an uncomfortable feeling.
Now, Anderson was scheduled for a preliminary hearing today, but chose to waive his appearance. The search is continuing for the rest of Robinson's remains with divers in Lake Michigan. Reporter Kaylee Sturrow with Scripps News Milwaukee brings us the latest.
The security camera captures a moment frozen in time. 19-year-old Sadie Carlina Robinson walking through the doors of the Twisted Fisherman restaurant in Milwaukee's Menominee Valley. It's April 1st, 2024, just after 5 p.m. Her smile radiates confidence as she scans the room, spotting the man waiting at the bar, Maxwell Anderson, 33, a former bartender at this very establishment. She doesn't know she's being recorded. She doesn't know these images will soon be scrutinized by detectives, news outlets, and a grieving community. She doesn't know this ordinary Monday evening will be her last. The footage shows them sitting together at the bar, eating, talking, laughing. Nothing appears unusual. Just two people getting to know each other on what should have been a forgettable first date. Text messages recovered later would confirm Sadie had told friends and her building secretary about her plans that evening. She even sent a Snapchat to a friend from the restaurant. After finishing their meal, the pair moved to Duke's on the Water around 6:30 p.m., continuing what seemed like a normal evening out. By 9:20 p.m., phone records would later show they arrived at Anderson's home in Milwaukee's South 39th Street area. Within 24 hours, Sadie Robinson would vanish. Her burned Honda Civic would be discovered at 7:32 a.m. the following morning. A severed human leg would be found by a passerby at Warnemont Park, and a community would be left searching for answers as more disturbing discoveries followed. What happened in those crucial hours between when Sadie's phone left Anderson's residence around 1 a.m. and when her car was found burning the next morning? How did a promising young woman with dreams of joining the Air Force and just weeks away from completing her associate's degree in criminal justice end up the victim of one of Milwaukee's most shocking crimes? The digital trail she left behind, her final text messages, location data from her phone, and those haunting surveillance images would become the foundation of an investigation that stunned veteran police officers and left a family devastated. As we examine the evidence, retrace the timeline, and uncover the disturbing details that emerged in the aftermath, one question remains at the center. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Have you ever met someone online? What safety precautions do you take? Share in the comments below, because as Sadie Robinson's story reveals, what begins as an ordinary evening can sometimes take an unimaginable turn. Welcome to Dark Trace Crime Stories, where every case cuts deep, every detail matters, and the truth is never what it seems. If you're visiting for the first time, kindly subscribe and trace the darkness with us. To our loyal viewers, thank you for your unwavering support. Your presence makes every mystery even more gripping. Before she became a headline, before her name was linked to tragedy, Sadie Carlina Robinson was a young woman with dreams, ambitions, and a life full of promise. Born on May 10, 2004, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Sadie grew up with a determination that set her apart from her peers. By the time she reached her senior year of high school, she had already mapped out her future with remarkable clarity. Not content to follow the standard timeline, she graduated a semester early, a testament to her academic drive and focus. At just 19 years old, Sadie was already building an impressive foundation for her future. When April 2024 arrived, she was merely 1 month away from earning her associate's degree in criminal justice at Milwaukee Area Technical College. Her academic journey reflected her methodical approach to life, setting goals and achieving them ahead of schedule. While pursuing her education, Sadie balanced her studies with practical work experience. She held a job at Pizza Shuttle, where colleagues described her as reliable, hardworking, and always willing to take on extra shifts. Her work ethic didn't go unnoticed by management or her coworkers, who came to depend on her consistency. But Sadie's ambitions extended far beyond her current circumstances. She had expressed serious interest in joining the United States Air Force after completing her degree. This career path aligned perfectly with her disciplined nature and desire to serve a purpose greater than herself. Friends recalled how she would research the requirements, physical training expectations, and potential specializations within the Air Force, approaching her future with the same thoroughness she applied to her studies. She was a beautiful angel, her mother, Sheena Scarborough, would later tell reporters, her voice breaking as she described the daughter she lost. She was admired everywhere she went. Those who knew Sadie consistently used the same words to describe her: vibrant, ambitious, driven. She possessed a natural charisma that drew people to her, whether in classroom discussions, workplace interactions, or social gatherings. Her smile, the same one captured in those final surveillance images, was frequently mentioned by those who knew her best. Sadie's loss left the family never being okay, emphasized her uncle, David Scarborough, capturing the permanent void her absence created. The pain in his words reflected not just personal grief, but the recognition of potential unfulfilled, a future that would never materialize. What made Sadie's death particularly devastating was how close she had come to reaching significant milestones. With her degree nearly complete and career plans taking shape, she stood at the threshold of a new chapter. Her family had already begun planning a celebration for her graduation, proud of how she had navigated her educational journey with such determination. In the days following her disappearance, Sadie's empty seat in her criminal justice classes served as a painful reminder to classmates and professors of the bright student who would never return. Her textbooks, still marked with her neat handwriting and highlighted passages, remained in her apartment, evidence of a student who approached her studies with seriousness and purpose. The cruel irony wasn't lost on those who knew her. A young woman studying criminal justice became the victim of a crime that would shock her community. The system she had hoped to serve would now be tasked with delivering justice for her. Sadie Robinson was not just a victim in a headline. She was a daughter, a niece, a friend, a student, a co-worker, a young woman whose life held immeasurable value and whose absence created an irreplaceable void in countless lives. April 1st, 2024, began as an ordinary Monday for Sadie Robinson. What no one could have predicted was that the choices made that day would set in motion a series of events ending in tragedy. Text messages recovered from Sadie's phone revealed she had arranged to meet Maxwell Anderson, a 33-year-old former bartender at the Twisted Fisherman, a Milwaukee seafood restaurant. The digital conversation showed they had agreed to meet there at 5 p.m. This wasn't random. Anderson had previously worked at this establishment and was familiar with the setting. Earlier that day, Sadie had mentioned her evening plans to her building secretary, confirming her intention to meet Anderson for their first date. This casual conversation would later become a crucial piece of information for investigators establishing a timeline. Security cameras at the Twisted Fisherman captured Anderson arriving first. Staff would later tell police that he mentioned waiting for a date. At approximately 5 p.m., the cameras recorded Sadie's arrival. She looked confident and at ease as she entered the restaurant, scanning the room before spotting Anderson at the bar. During their time at the restaurant, Sadie sent a Snapchat to a friend from a location, another digital breadcrumb that would help investigators piece together her final hours. The surveillance footage showed nothing unusual, just two people eating, drinking, and conversing at the bar. To anyone observing, it appeared to be nothing more than a typical first date. Around 6:30 p.m., after finishing their meal, the pair left the Twisted Fisherman. Their next destination was Duke's on the Water Bar, where they continued their evening. Witnesses would later confirm seeing them there, noting nothing that raised concern about their interactions. The evening progressed, and by approximately 9:20 p.m., phone records would later show that both Sadie and Anderson had arrived at his home in Milwaukee's South 39th Street area. This movement was tracked through Sadie's cell phone data, which would become a critical element in the investigation. What happened inside Anderson's residence remains largely unknown. No witnesses were present, and the only two people who know the full truth are Sadie, who can no longer speak, and Anderson, who would later face serious charges. What is known through phone records is that Sadie's phone remained at Anderson's residence until approximately 1 a.m. on April 2nd. At that point, her phone began moving again, but whether Saad was with her phone remains a question that haunts the case. The digital trail shows Sadie's phone traveling to Pleasant Valley Park and then to Warnemont Park. The device continued transmitting location data until approximately 4:30 a.m., when it stopped sending signals, likely because the battery died or the phone was destroyed. When Sadie failed to arrive for her shift at Pizza Shuttle that evening, concern began to grow. Her reliable nature made her absence immediately noticeable. She wasn't responding to calls or texts, completely out of character for someone described by friends and family as dependable and communicative. The first alarming discovery came at 7:32 a.m. on April 2nd, when Sadie's Honda Civic was found burning in Milwaukee. The vehicle had been deliberately set on fire in what investigators would later determine was an attempt to destroy evidence. Inside the burned car, police would find something unexpected: clothing belonging to Maxwell Anderson. This discovery immediately raised red flags for investigators. Why would Anderson's clothing be inside Sadie's burning vehicle? The question pointed toward a connection that would become increasingly significant as the investigation unfolded. As the day progressed, the situation took an even more disturbing turn. A passerby at Warnemont Park made a horrifying discovery: a severed human leg. This grim finding would later be confirmed through preliminary DNA testing to belong to Saad Robinson. In less than 24 hours, what began as a seemingly normal first date had transformed into a nightmare scenario: a burning car, human remains, and a young woman who had vanished. The digital footprint left by Sadie's phone created a haunting map of her final movements, from the restaurant where she smiled for security cameras to the park where parts of her body would be discovered. For investigators, the clock was now ticking. For Saada's family, an unimaginable nightmare was just beginning.
No matter who owns the home.
And Kendall, with that said, we should point out that investigators have yet to reveal how or where Robinson died.
Right, Patrick. Investigators have discovered pieces of Robinson's body in Cudahy, like we mentioned, as well as on Milwaukee's northwest side, but they have yet to reveal how she died, where she died, or a potential motive.
Sick son of a hurt my baby. This sick son of a is gonna pay. This is justice for Sade. Who would do something like this to my beautiful baby? She hurt nobody. She harmed nobody. I hate this. And so when he's on the inside, I want you to rape and torture that like till I get to and hunt him eternally. Torture that rape him in the population till I can get to him and hunt the out of him. Justice for Sade. Justice will be served for my baby. Justice.
I got one thing to say.
The 33-year-old man charged with Sadie Robinson's murder presented himself to the world as an ordinary bartender. But as investigators dug into his background, a more disturbing portrait emerged, one that revealed warning signs that had gone unheeded. Anderson had worked at the Twisted Fisherman, the very restaurant where he would later meet Sadie, for their fatal first date. His familiarity with the establishment wasn't coincidental. It provided him with a comfort zone, a place where he knew the layout and could appear at ease. Whether he deliberately chose this location to create a false sense of security remains speculation, but the choice would later seem calculated. Prior to Sadie's murder, Anderson had accumulated a troubling criminal record. Court documents revealed multiple encounters with law enforcement, including charges of domestic abuse, drunk driving, and disorderly conduct. These weren't isolated incidents, but rather a pattern of behavior that suggested volatility and a disregard for boundaries. The domestic abuse charges were particularly relevant in hindsight. They demonstrated a history of violence toward others, specifically in intimate relationships. Yet these red flags weren't visible to Sadie when she agreed to meet him on April 1, 2024. Like many who use dating apps, she had no easy way to access his criminal history or understand the potential danger he posed. Anderson's arrest on April 4th came during a traffic stop, just 2 days after Sadie's leg was discovered. Detectives had been building their case rapidly, gathering enough evidence to justify taking him into custody while they continued their investigation. During the traffic stop, a detective noticed what appeared to be a bloodstain in Anderson's car, a detail that would later be documented in search warrants. The search of Anderson's home on Milwaukee's South Side yielded disturbing evidence that painted a picture of premeditation and potential serial behavior. The basement, described in police reports as a sex dungeon, contained women's clothing hidden in various locations, under a tool bench, between support beams and the foundation, and in a garbage can. These items included underwear, bras, leggings, and blouses, clothing that didn't belong to Anderson, and raised questions about other potential victims. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery of an ID card belonging to another woman. This finding suggested that Sadie might not have been Anderson's first target, though investigators have not publicly connected him to other disappearances or murders. In July 2024, newly unsealed search warrants revealed even more troubling details. Investigators had collected swabs of stains throughout the house, documented a knife in the kitchen sink, an axe hanging on the living room wall, and a mop in the stationary tub. While no definitive murder weapon was identified, the presence of these items suggested potential tools for the crime. The most damning evidence against Anderson came from an informant who spoke to police on April 15, 2024. According to court filings, this individual had been at Anderson's home on March 5th, nearly a month before Sada's murder. The informant described seeing Anderson's basement, including a plastic tarp that covered a sanitation sink, ceiling, floor, and walls. Most chillingly, the informant stated that Anderson had explicitly told them he intended to kill Sadie Robinson, using a gun to force her into the basement where he planned on shooting Robinson and then dismember her body in the room before disposing Robinson's body throughout the city. The informant reported seeing 3 saws in the basement that Anderson allegedly intended to use for dismemberment. This statement suggested a level of premeditation that shocked even veteran investigators. If accurate, it meant Anderson had targeted Sadie specifically and planned her murder in advance, not as a crime of passion or opportunity, but as a calculated act. Adding to the disturbing pattern, another woman came forward with an account of a February 2024 date with Anderson. She reported that he had invited her back to his home, and she believed he had drugged her drink. This allegation, while not resulting in charges at the time, aligned with what appeared to be a predatory pattern. When confronted with the charges against him, first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson, Anderson maintained his innocence. But the mounting evidence, from physical findings to digital records to witness statements, painted a picture of a man who had not only committed a horrific crime, but had potentially planned it well in advance. On April 12, 2024, Maxwell Anderson stood before a Milwaukee County judge as prosecutors formally charged him with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson. The gravity of these charges reflected the heinous nature of the crime against Sadie Robinson. Recognizing the severity of the allegations and the potential flight risk Anderson posed, the court set his bond at an extraordinary $5 million, one of the highest bonds in recent Milwaukee County history. This substantial amount effectively ensured Anderson would remain in custody throughout the legal proceedings, unable to pose any further threat to the community. During his initial court appearance, Anderson maintained his innocence, entering a not guilty plea to all charges. His demeanor in court was described as calm and composed, a stark contrast to the brutal crime he was accused of committing. The disconnect between his courtroom presentation and the allegations against him only added to the public's fascination with the case. As the legal process moved forward, Anderson's defense team began formulating their strategy. One significant motion they filed was a request to have the arson charge tried separately from the homicide and mutilation charges. Their argument centered on the potential prejudice that might result from jurors hearing all charges together. As of early 2025, the court had not yet ruled on this motion. Anderson's defense attorneys also considered requesting a change of venue, citing the extensive media coverage and public outrage that might make it impossible to seat an impartial jury in Milwaukee County. This common defense tactic in high-profile cases acknowledges the difficulty of finding jurors who haven't already formed opinions about a defendant's guilt when a case has received significant publicity. While the criminal case proceeded, Sadie's family took action in civil court, filing a wrongful death lawsuit against Anderson. This parallel legal action sought financial compensation for their loss, though the practical impact of such a lawsuit remained questionable given Anderson's financial situation. Court filings revealed that Anderson's father had sold his son's home to cover the mounting costs of his criminal defense. According to these documents, after paying for legal representation, only $4,800 remained from the sale proceeds. This financial reality suggested that even if the Robinson family prevailed in their civil suit, collecting any significant damages would be unlikely. Throughout 2024 and early 2025, the case moved through a series of pretrial hearings. These procedural steps included evidence reviews, motion hearings, and status conferences, all necessary components of the legal process leading up to trial. Each court appearance drew media attention and brought Sadie's family back to the courthouse to face her alleged killer. In February 2025, a judge confirmed that the case remained on track for its scheduled trial date of May 27, 2025. This timeline, more than a year after the crime, reflected the complex nature of the case and the extensive preparation required by both prosecution and defense teams. The final pretrial hearing took place in April 2025, marking the last procedural step before the trial. During this hearing, attorneys from both sides confirmed they had no outstanding issues requiring the court's intervention before trial. The prosecution and defense indicated they had maintained good communication and were prepared to proceed as scheduled. As the May 2025 trial date approaches, the prosecution continues to build its case, relying heavily on the physical evidence collected from Anderson's home, the digital trail left by Sadie's phone, surveillance footage, and witness statements. The defense, meanwhile, works to identify weaknesses in the state's case and develop alternative explanations for the evidence. For Sadie's family, the approaching trial represents both a source of anxiety and a step toward closure. While nothing can bring back their loved one, the legal proceedings offer the possibility of justice and accountability for the person responsible for her death. The trial, expected to last several weeks, will likely draw national attention as one of the most disturbing murder cases in recent Wisconsin history.
Interest is now an accused killer. 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson is charged in the death of 19-year-old Shade Robinson.
Fox 6's Durante Matthews was in the courtroom today and joins us live now to break down what happened.
Yeah, and Brian and Steph, it was a really difficult experience for Shade Robinson's family today, having to sit there in the courtroom and listen to all the gruesome details surrounding her death. And now that they say that Anderson is charged, they now want a conviction.
This sick son of a is gonna pay.
Barely speaking above a whisper.
This is justice for Shade.
And fighting back tears.
Who the would do something like this to my beautiful baby?
Sheena Scarborough.
She hurt nobody.
Was pushing forward for her daughter, 19-year-old Shade Robinson. Friday, Robinson's family sat in court and heard the grim details surrounding her death. while staring at the man accused of taking her life, 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson.
The allegations in the complaint are abhorrent. It was the highest level of violence imaginable.
Prosecutors say Anderson and Robinson were going on a
The
date
tragic
Monday
case of
evening
Sadie
on
Robinson highlights critical vulnerabilities in modern dating practices and offers important lessons that could potentially save lives. While no safety measure can guarantee protection against someone determined to cause harm, several precautions might reduce risks significantly. Online dating has transformed how people meet potential partners, but this convenience comes with inherent dangers. Sadie did take one important safety step. She informed her building secretary about her plans to meet Maxwell Anderson. This decision ultimately helped investigators establish a timeline and identify Anderson as a suspect quickly. However, additional precautions might have altered the outcome. Meeting in public places provides a crucial first layer of protection. Sadie and Anderson did meet at a restaurant initially, which follows standard safety advice. However, the decision to continue to a private residence, especially on a first date, significantly increased vulnerability. Safety experts consistently recommend maintaining public meetings for several encounters before considering private locations. Sharing real-time location with trusted friends represents another vital precaution. Modern smartphones allow users to share their location continuously with selected contacts. Had Sadie activated this feature with friends or family, they might have noticed concerning movements earlier and potentially intervened. Background checks, while imperfect, can reveal crucial information about potential dates. Anderson's history of domestic abuse and disorderly conduct might have served as warning signs had Sadie been aware of them. Many advocates now push for dating platforms to integrate background check capabilities or, at minimum, verify users' identities more thoroughly. The case also underscores the importance of accessible public records. Currently, criminal histories often remain difficult for average citizens to access or interpret. Improving public access to this information, particularly for violent offenses, could empower individuals to make more informed decisions about potential partners. Recognizing potential warning signs during interactions can also provide protection. Experts point to several behaviors that might indicate increased risk: pressuring to meet in private locations, expressing anger when boundaries are set, sharing too much personal information too quickly, or making statements that devalue or objectify others. While we don't know the specific dynamics between Sadie and Anderson during their date, awareness of these patterns can help others identify concerning behavior. Community vigilance played a crucial role in this case. The passerby who discovered Sadie's remains at Warnemont Park immediately contacted authorities, enabling a faster investigation. Similarly, businesses that provided surveillance footage helped police track Anderson's movements. This collective awareness and willingness to report suspicious activities remains essential for public safety. For those experiencing domestic violence or concerned about a potential partner's behavior, resources exist, but often remain underutilized. Organizations like the National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-7233 provide confidential support, safety planning, and referrals to local resources. Many communities also offer specialized services through local advocacy organizations. The case also highlights systemic gaps in addressing potential offenders before they escalate to violence. Anderson's history of substance abuse and prior offenses suggests missed opportunities for intervention. Strengthening mental health services, substance abuse treatment, and rehabilitation programs might help address underlying issues before they manifest as violence. Some dating platforms have begun implementing safety features like panic buttons, ID verification, and background checks, but these measures vary widely across services. Advocating for consistent safety standards across all platforms could provide more uniform protection. Ultimately, Sadie Robinson's story serves as a powerful reminder that personal safety requires constant vigilance. While the responsibility for violence always rests with the perpetrator, understanding potential risks and taking proactive measures can help protect against those who intend harm. What do you think could be done to make online dating safer? Share your thoughts below.
Let's go here.
Family, friends, and strangers coming together to remember 19-year-old Sade Robinson.
Sade is me. She's all of us. She's every little girl that wanted to be loved.
It could have been any one of our daughters. She was just going on a date. Who expected it to end like this?
For Sade.
I'm a fashion designer, and I've had this pink corduroy fabric forever with nothing to do with it because I had never assumed I would do anything with pink corduroy, and what better thing to do with it?
What do you want the message to be?
That she was loved.
Community members like Dee Dee Davis and Nicole Green say they didn't know Robinson, but that didn't matter.
If it happens to somebody else's child, it might as well have happened to mine.
So we need to just be out here and support the family with peace, kindness, and compassion, and let the Lord do the revenge. But we need to search for her.
Sade Carlina Robinson stood at the threshold of a promising future in April 2024. Just weeks away from earning her associate's degree in criminal justice, she had already begun mapping the next chapter of her life, potentially serving in the United States Air Force. Her academic achievements, graduating high school early and nearly completing college ahead of schedule, spoke to a young woman who approached life with purpose and determination. That future, with all its potential and possibility, was violently stolen on April 1st, 2024. The cruel irony remains inescapable. A student of criminal justice became the victim of a crime that shocked an entire community. The system she had hoped to serve now works to deliver justice in her name. As Maxwell Anderson's May 2025 trial approaches, Sade's family continues their painful wait for accountability. The courtroom proceedings will force them to relive the horrific details of her final hours, yet they remain steadfast in their pursuit of justice. No verdict can restore what was lost, but it may provide a measure of closure to a family that, in the words of Sade's uncle, will never be okay following her death. The fragments of Sade's life, her textbooks still marked with her handwriting, her uniform from Pizza Shuttle, her research into Air Force requirements, remain as artifacts of interrupted potential. They stand as reminders not just of what was lost, but of who was lost, a vibrant, ambitious young woman described by her mother as a beautiful angel. In sharing Sade's story, we honor her memory while acknowledging the profound injustice of her death. Her case has already prompted important conversations about dating safety, community vigilance, and the systems that failed to protect her. As this case moves toward its legal conclusion, we will continue to follow developments and provide updates. Subscribe to our channel to receive notifications about future coverage of Sade Robinson's case and other important stories that demand our attention and action. Did you find Sade's case compelling? If so, hit that subscribe button now and join us as we continue to trace the darkness that lurks beneath everyday encounters. Each story we cover serves not just to inform, but to protect. By understanding these cases, we all become more aware of the warning signs that might save a life. Your subscription helps us bring these important stories to light. Stay with us. There are more cases waiting to be told.